Hello and welcome to EU Decoded, the podcast from the EPP Group in the European Parliament. And in today's episode, we will be talking about the challenges facing European car makers. The automotive industry has long been a cornerstone of Europe's economy, providing over 13.8 million quality jobs and contributing significantly to the EU's GDP. However, the sector now faces unprecedented difficulties, from regulatory pressures and high energy costs to competition from subsidized international players. So joining us is Jens Gieseke, EPP Group MEP and coordinator in the Transport Committee, who will help us unpack this complex and timely topic. So let's get straight to the point. How serious is the situation?
So I think the situation is very serious. I come from Germany, from Lower Saxony, and in my region there are many companies dealing with automotive, producing cars, and they announced for the next year to close down factories. There are more than 30,000 jobs at risk. So the situation in my constituency is very serious. And in Europe, in different member states, like in Poland, in Hungary, in Spain, in Italy, the situation is similar. So we can state the situation is very, very, very serious for the automotive sector.
So what are the roots of this problem? How are external pressures, such as competition from the Chinese manufacturers, impacting European automakers?
Competition is, of course, normally we are in favor of competition, but if you have unfair competition and you have heavily subsidized markets and you have no level playing field, then it is difficult to compete. And of course, we are in a transformation process, but for our car manufacturers, it is not so easy. Technology-wise, the Chinese are ahead and they are simply producing cheaper. And you see, then it's difficult for our companies to compete with especially competition from China.
And it's not only competition from China, but also one of the world's most ambitious climate goals of the EU is impacting car producers. How are these targets shaping the automotive sector transition?
You know, it is difficult to describe it, but of course we have the Green Deal, and the Green Deal has set certain targets. Our political competitors, the Greens, they say always we have to be more ambitious, but ambition can in a way lead to the situation that you are not able to sell your product. For example, we have the 100% target for 2035. Which means that we are going this line just electrification. This means the end of the combustion engine, ban of combustion engine. And that is difficult to have it in a certain period. You know, there are other factors which determine the decision, the infrastructure, the availability of cheap cars. And so the electrification has been defined by policy, but in real terms, the civil society does not accept electric cars. So we have there a gap, and that is difficult for our manufacturers not to perform in the right way. This is why our industry suffers for the moment.
Just to remind us, the EU made a decision to ban the sale of new petrol and diesel cars from 2035, and the EPP Group opposed this decision during a vote in the European Parliament. So what alternative proposals could be suggested moving forward?
Well, it was a very controversial discussion in the Parliament, and it was a close decision. So it was in a way a 50-50 with a majority for a ban of the combustion engine. But if you divide the Parliament on such an important question, the consequences are severe. Now you see that we were right with our EPP position to say we want a different approach. We want technological neutrality. We want to have a broad definition of not just going the electric path, but having alternatives in fuels, in e-fuels, in biofuels, in synthetic fuels. And this has not been approved by the Parliament. And now we see that obviously China has a competitive advantage because they have the technology, they have the batteries, they have the raw materials, they have the low energy prices. And now we cannot win this game. So we need to have a broader approach. And this means that for the coming 5 years, we will not have just a Green Deal, but a green industrial deal where we take care of the demands of the industry, that we are successful as industry and creating opportunities and not by banning, killing our industry.
But how does the concept of technological neutrality align with the idea of a green industrial deal? And why is it so important for the future of the automotive industry?
You know, in car production, it has always been the idea of having a better solution, of innovation, and not banning a technology by a legislator. Our EPP fundamental conviction is that we want to have open markets, innovation, and an industry led by engineers and not by lawyers. So the opposite is that if you have, so to say, a planned system like we had in communism, then you say, 2035, it's over with combustion engine, and then you have to have electric cars. And you do not care on the framework, on the availability, you just state this. But we see in reality this does not work. So this is not our EPP approach. We are for market economy. We trust in the creativity of engineers, and we want to let the consumer decide at the end, and not the politician, that I think it's a smarter idea to use just an electric car.
There is also one additional problem for car manufacturers. Some of them face fines for not meeting the EU CO2 targets for cars in 2025, and they can pay up to 15 billion euros. So is it wise to impose fines on the car sector at a moment when they are planning to close plants?
I think it is, simply it's the opposite of smart regulation. We have a regulation where we see that the affected industry is not ready to deliver on the targets. And then in German we have to say die Sahne auf der Torte. So to say the cream on the cake is we will put fines if you do not deliver on the targets. This is obviously stupid. It's like in communism. If you have a 10 years plan, you do not deliver. So politically, I'm convinced that for 2025, we need to give a strong signal to industry that we will avoid fines. Because in real terms, imagine I'm from Lower Saxony and I have to discuss with the workers. They are frightened. They risk losing their jobs. And then the European level comes, we put a fine on your company. Additionally, this is something I could never explain. This is why I work so hard in the parliament with our automotive paper from EPP, that the Commission has to deliver as soon as possible in the next 100 days a solution for that problem. We have to avoid the fines. Otherwise, we will kill as legislators the industry. And I will not be part of this.
But how can Europe ensure fair competition? Because this is also part of the problem, and address the trade imbalances, particularly in relation to countries like China?
Well, of course, it is difficult with the tariffs. The industry is engaged in China as well. They have joint ventures. And if we put now tariffs on the cars coming from China, we affect our industry as well. But our means are limited. And if we want to be strong and give a signal to China that we do not accept all the kind of subsidies, we have to put tariffs on the cars from China. So there is a strong commitment that we are not weak, that we are not naive, that we act and not just react.
And this is also an exercise to be done by the European Commission?
Of course, the Commission is now in the process of negotiation, the final stage of the tariffs, but the Commission is strong and the Commission has full support from EPP on the tariffs.
So what measures are needed to simplify the EU regulatory framework and boost innovation in the automotive sector to help it stay competitive?
You know, in general, we have to leave this 5-year plan from Timmermans and the green agenda behind us. We have to be open for innovation, for solutions, and not banning something. We need a level playing field, and we need not to have additional bureaucracy on segments like automotive, like aviation, all the files from the Green Deal legislation, which have a negative impact on industry. We have to correct them. We have to do it. We need to guarantee that the level playing field is possible. One example, not automotive, in aviation, we have a SAF quota, sustainable aviation fuel. We are all in favor of this quotas. But if just our European airlines have to deliver on the quotas and the competitors from Asia, from China, they don't, you have a disadvantage for our airlines. So flying will take place, but simply not with European airlines. So as a side effect of our legislation, we destroy the competitiveness of our industry, and that has to be corrected as soon as possible.
And how to correct it? Well, looking ahead, what does the EPP Group's vision for a holistic automotive strategy actually entail? What does the EPP Group expect from the European Commission?
First, the Commission has to deliver on avoiding the penalties. And second, we need a revision of the CO2 standards for cars and vans as soon as possible. And then we need to deliver on the principle of technological neutrality. We have to accept that, this one-sided approach, we say the electric car is clean and zero emission. It is not true if the electricity comes from a coal plant. So if you have a fuel which is able to reduce CO2, you have to accept this fuel as CO2 reducing. So there you need a broad approach. This is why we ask for a broad definition on e-fuels, biofuels, synthetic fuels, not banning something, but making possible and creating opportunities. That is something we want as EPP.
The final question: how can we balance ambitious climate goals with the economic realities facing the automotive sector?
I think there's a clear commitment from EPP on the general goal to have climate neutrality in 2050. But we cannot have a certain date and then say, 2035, in April, there will be no combustion engine. We have to say we have the long goal for 2050, and then how engineers and the industry adapts to this goal, that is up to the industry, but not up to us to have certain midterm deadlines. It is our goal, but there is a clear commitment that we want to have carbon neutrality to 2050.
Thanks for joining us today, Jens Gieseke. So, the challenges facing the European automotive industry are vast, but so are the opportunities for innovation and transformation. And as we move forward, a balanced approach, one that fosters competitiveness, supports workers, and meets climate goals, will be crucial. Well, to stay up to date with the latest in EU politics, follow us on social media and visit our website at eppgroup.eu. Thanks for listening.